Hello and welcome to the Digital Photo Academy. Today in this video we're going to look at Adobe Bridge. Adobe Bridge is a very interesting and useful application. This is an accompanying application to the Adobe Creative Suite. It's free of charge, provided you are subscribing to any of the Adobe products. And the fundamental function of this application is that of an asset management application. The difference is between this as an asset management application in comparison to, let's say, Lightroom, where you're also managing your assets. Here you have the ability to view and open any form of document, application, or whatever it may be. For example, just to sort of give you an overview of the whole thing, if I were to go onto my user, which is myself, you notice it shows folders, and it's also showing me a PDF, and it's showing me an Excel file, and a bunch of other folders. And by the same token, if let's say I went into the document, so it's showing me a whole bunch of other types of documents. So there's a Word document as well in here. There's a PDF. This is a very powerful feature. So think of Adobe Bridge perhaps not just as an asset management application, but perhaps as a browser, file browser, which is supercharged and possibly on some sort of steroids, for the lack of better words. And it has many features in here, which we will go through each one at a time. But in this particular video, all I'm interested in sharing is the fundamental interface and how you can create your own interface to make it more comfortable for you and what the basic features are. So to begin with, you notice there's these little icons at the top left. And then directly across in the middle kind of part of it, you have Essentials, Libraries, Film Strip, Output, Workflow, Metadata, and then an arrow, which has additional ways of viewing. So if you click on it, you have all of these options. Further on, looking only at the top part to the right, this is again viewing preferences. You want to view quickly by looking at just the embedded thumbnails and images, and here you can choose the quality preview, and here you can filter by many ways, or you can sort by file names, or guess what this is, you can do a descending or ascending order of file representation, and then open recent files which you might have worked on in recent history. And then there's a new folder icon, so you can actively create a new folder within the space. And then there's the trash bin. And then just directly above, this is a search bar. So if you click in here, and you can actually search just the current folder, or spotlight search in the computer, in the stock, or you have an advanced search option. And we will look at all of these variables very shortly. Coming back to the top part of the screen and still staying on the left, you will notice that there's a horizontal bit of information which shows you the actual directory hierarchy of where you are at a current point in time. So in my particular case at this point, my computer, then my hard drive, and then my user's name, and then myself as the user, then I'm looking at a Dropbox, and then JPEG files. So it's giving me the entire hierarchy of the directory structure from where I'm getting these files. Underneath that, I would refer to this as the first left column. It is divided into two portions. First, there are two tabs in the top half. One is called Favorites, and the other is Folders. So favorites is something that you determine as to which ones would be your favorites, and you can drag and drop and create shortcuts over here without really moving the files or creating any additional data. Then you have folders. So if you click on folders, Then it shows you the parent folder from where it is coming from and the hierarchy through which it is going, and you can scroll and look at the entire directory structure of any of, let me put it this way, of the local hard drive or any secondary hard drive or any additional hard drives that you may have plugged into your system at that point in time. So this is the folder, and this is the favorite part. Then directly beneath it, there are multiple tabs, 4 of them to be precise. Let's begin with the first, filter. This allows you to sort your images based on many different aspects. So there's labels, there's file type, keywords, author name, date created, and so on and so forth. So for example, if let's say I want to sort them by label. So what does label mean? So you see these color associated with any of the thumbnails over here. These are labels which you can assign and apply to images as and when you're sorting them out. And you can label them in many different ways, which we'll look at in detail. So if I wanted to sort out and say, okay, which are my selects? So I click on it, and then it shows me only those files which have been labeled as select files. And then I can uncheck it and say, okay, what are my seconds? And there we go. Or for that matter, I just want to see the ones that I have not labeled at all. So I can do that. By the same token, if I go into file types, so it shows me there's one folder, there are 95 JPEGs and 6 Photoshop documents. So if I say, okay, which are the Photoshop documents? So I check on it, and it shows me the 6 Photoshop documents. By the same token, I can uncheck it and then say, just show me the JPEG files, and it'll show me just the JPEG files. So these are different ways of filtering your documents that are visible, or images or video files, or whatever it may be. So if I said, okay, there's 14 images that say activity associated in a keyword. So I click on that, and it shows me 14 of those images. Continuing on, there are many ways of resolving the sorting of your files or images per se. It all depends on how you may have input the metadata or the keywords, or done the labeling or the rating, or what color profile there may be, what nature of white balance may have been used, or if there are any raw files or non-raw files. So all of those things. Bit depth. So do I have any 16-bit files? Let's check. So there are 4 16-bit files. So this really makes life very easy in terms of sorting your stuff out. Collections is a very interesting and powerful tool. This incidentally also exists within the Lightroom world in exactly the same manner. And what it fundamentally is you create a collection, and you can create a collection from many different directories and bring them into one space, individual images or collection of images, which then become available to you on the fly. To give you an idea, right at the bottom, you see 2 icons. One is a new collection, one is a smart collection, and then finally a trash bin. Trash bin obviously will delete that. So if I wanted to create a new collection, I say new collection, and then I can give it a name and then build on it. So if I don't do anything, it won't do anything. It'll just stay empty. I'm going to trash it for now, because we'll come back and look at how to manage collections or create collections, including smart collections. And then there's an export module, which is very similar to the export modules in Lightroom as well, which we'll discuss separately in the Lightroom videos. You can create your own. There's custom export. So if you click on it, there's nothing in here. Web ready export, nothing in here. Export to DNG, nothing in here. So none of these have any information to see. But if you clicked on the create new preset, then it opens up a new dialog, and it allows you to choose the nature of the export module that you wish to create. which we will again go look at. In the most recent iteration, where Adobe has updated a whole load of things, including Photoshop, Lightroom, and Bridge as well, the workflow is a very powerful tool. So when you come into workflow, you notice there's a custom workflow, rename, change format, resize, high-res JPEG. So I've created one of my own, and if you go at the top, it says workflow. So if you click on the word workflow, it then opens up, and here you can move a certain action down or up, and you can add or you can delete, and you can create your own workflow. And this is very useful for particularly in situations where, let's say, you have covered an event, and when you were done with the whole event, you have a few thousand images that you need to sort through. And let's say you have shot everything as high-res or large JPEGs or TIFFs or RAW files. You can, without having to input them into any catalog like Lightroom requires you to do, you can simply transfer them onto a directory or into a repository where you're holding all your assets, and then view them through the folders, and then select them all, create a workflow, and apply that workflow. So you don't have to open any image, you don't have to do anything, and it will allow you to do all those wonderful things from within Bridge without ever having to leave this environment. So workflow is a very, very powerful resource. Now, in some cases, in some of these windows, you will notice there's this flyout menu. So these are, for example, in the filters, there's additional ways of sorting your files out. You may not see it everywhere, but in some cases, you will see them. So I go back to my essentials. Okay, and again, when I come into essentials, so we talked about the left column. In the central space is the actual content region. And again, notice there's a flyout menu. So currently it's set to auto layout. Then there's a vertical layout and there's a horizontal layout. So what is the difference? In the auto layout, it has sorted out and it has placed the information within the given space. If I click on vertical layout, you won't see any change because currently the auto allows me to maintain it as a vertical layout. And this perhaps would become a lot more obvious if I were to go back here where there's a whole lot of images and I need to scroll up and down to view them. So if I said vertical layout and auto layout, nothing has changed. But watch what happens as I go to the horizontal layout. Suddenly the scroll bar has disappeared from the right side and it has appeared on the bottom. So now you have the ability to scroll left to right. So again, all of this is very dependent on your personal preferences. In this case, right now, at the bottom, if you come look at it, that shows me exactly the number of items that reside here, which is 102. And then there's this little slider with a negative and a positive symbol. So if you keep your cursor hovering over any one of the sides, it shows you exactly what it is going to do. So it's a small thumbnail and it's a large thumbnail. So if I reduce the thumbnail, that's what happens. And if I go to a large thumbnail, you can actually increase the thumbnails to whatever scale you want. It all, again, is based on your personal preferences. Next, you have this multi-grid sort of icon. And if you hover over it, it says, click to lock thumbnail. Then view content as details, the next icon. So if I click on it, then it starts to show a lot of additional information as well. So it says whatever date it was created, modified, and a whole load of other things. Then we have the next icon which says view content as a list. Basically, it's going to be very similar to what you're seeing here, except that the icons will become smaller, and it'll also add the rating, the labels, and the keywords that may be associated to any of the images. And then the next, so I'm going to go back to where I was. Here, it's checked as tiles. If I uncheck tiles, you notice that the dark gray region, which was a tile, has disappeared. And if I check it, again, your personal viewing preference. Then you have next one, which is unchecked right now, which says thumbnails only. So what it'll do is it'll eliminate the names associated to the files, and it will only and only show you the thumbnails, and you can then continue onwards doing whatever you want, however you want, that suits your purposes. And lastly, use the command key for labels and ratings. That's just a shortcut. On a Windows computer, this may be referred to as use control key for labels and ratings. And the idea behind this is that you have the ability, let's say I pick on this image and I wish to create a label for it or a rating for it. So then I will basically press the command key and the shortcut key associated with that, and it's currently 6 for the red color, so I have associated that over there. And if I wanted to get rid of it, I will press the same command 6 or control 6 on a Windows computer to either add or take away the color label. By the same token, the star rating can be assigned by simply pushing the numerical key, and it will go to that particular rating. And if you wish to assign the actual label, so currently you can obviously click on it, or you can again use the command or control key and push the appropriate number, the numerical value. So let's say I want to assign a 1 star. So I'll do command 1 or control 1 on a Windows computer, and notice the first star is associated. I wish to change it to a 3 star. I'll simply go and press command 3 or control 3. And if I wish to take it away, I'll press that key again or simply come and click in here, which takes away the rating. So now we know somewhat what this is all about. On the top, there's this flyout, which we talked about, so don't forget this, depending on how you may wish to work. Before we move away from the central window, currently we are in the Essentials viewing space. There are multiple viewing spaces. So there's one called Libraries, and these are nothing more than viewing options. If you click on Libraries, then it shows you a horizontal grid of thumbnails, which you can then scroll through, and you can reduce or increase the thumbnail size. It all depends on how you may wish to utilize this space. Okay, so this way you don't have to worry about a preview or whatever it may be. It gives you a very large preview. Interestingly, you can select multiple images and it will continue to create larger previews of multiple images as well. So it's very convenient, and then you can click out of any image and then go away to the next, and you can use your scroll keys on the keyboard to better understand how you can move through. And if you notice, again, there's a flyout menu here. Again, it's referring to vertical or horizontal, so the same behavior. The film strip, oh, by the way, there's a new tab over here called Libraries, which we will talk shortly. So currently we are in the library mode. Now, what Libraries is this is a virtual space where you can store your images or anything else that you may be working. And if you'll notice, at the bottom left of this column, there's the cloud symbol. This simply implies that you have this information residing in the Adobe cloud storage space, which is assigned to you based on your subscription. And you can create additional folders or subtract. So I have these libraries here. So if I said, okay, what do I have in my logo library? So there's a bunch of information over here. And if I go back and say my library, so it has some other imagery in here. And I go back and there's another my library. So there's empty. So I haven't done anything. And I don't want to sort of bother with this. This is nothing but color patches and some other stuff that was being worked on. So this is how this works. And if we go from libraries into film strip, the difference is it's not really much different than what the previous viewing screen was, except that we don't have any library or any such thing visible. It's just the preview and thumbnails at the bottom scrolling left to right. And once again, you can make it into a vertical layout, so you will scroll top to bottom. That's the only difference over here. So if I leave it to auto, it prefers to work left to right horizontal format. Output is a wonderful, wonderful feature which saves you a lot of grief and time. And basically what it does is it allows you to create. You can either create contact sheets or just create a PDF file to be shared with a client based on the resolution, the size, and a whole lot of things. And you will have templates over here, different types of templates. Also, you have the ability of choosing the size of paper, or you can create your own based on your own preferences. And it's very, very simple in the sense that there's a lot of options in here. So your grids and margins, and we will look into the details, watermark, PDF properties. All you have to do is say, you want an image, and you can just drag and drop it. And it by default fits into the space and associates a given name to the file as well. So, which is kind of cool. And you can scroll through multiple images and say, okay, now I want this file over here. Or for that matter, keep going and you say, okay, I want this file over here. So you notice it's fitting itself. And then you have other properties that you can work with. So this is your output. And this is a wonderful, wonderful feature because it really does facilitate your workflow quite a bit, particularly when you have to share images with a client in particular, or you may wish to keep a hard copy as a reference. You could really create a contact sheet over here depending on the size and just save it as a PDF file. The workflow we looked at earlier based on how to create, and we'll do that. And then we have the metadata file. So any metadata associated with your file, which could be labels, which could be the file type, the size, keywords, whatever it may be, everything will show up accordingly. And then if you click on this drop down, you have other options. So you want to see just by the keywords. So now it shows the keywords as well. Okay, so you will notice here's the keywords and there's the metadata. So again, if I said preview, now here the thumbnails have come in a left column over here and the preview is on the right. So what Bridge is trying to do is maximize the way the preview shows. And anytime that you have a preview open, whether it is in the preview version or in the essentials version, when you pick an image, you have the notice when I move my cursor, it becomes a magnifier. So what it's saying is that you have the ability to actually magnify a certain portion in this preview to see the image sharpness or detail. So if I click on it, it now shows me, and I can click in that preview and I can scroll through the image to see what is going on. And then to get out, I simply click again and it disappears. So we were in the preview version over here. So notice I can do exactly the same thing and I can view things quite clearly. Fair enough? Moving on. Next up is the light table. This is like a very quick preview of all your thumbnails, and this is by default in a vertical scroll format. And again, you can change it to a horizontal layout or an auto layout, whatever you prefer. And once again, you have the ability to enlarge the thumbnails, to quickly preview your files, make selections without anything else on the window distracting you. And finally, we have folders. So when we look into folders, you'll notice on the left-hand column in the lower section, it's now showing you the actual hierarchy of where these images are coming from. So currently, it's showing the exact hierarchy of to where the images reside. And go back to essentials, and let's do one more thing. Over here, just like all other Adobe applications, you have the ability to customize your workspace. So this window that you see here with all these sections to it is primarily a workspace. So if you decide that, hey, I don't need some of these guys, so I don't need filters, so you don't want the filters here, you can literally click on the tab and drag it over to another space, and I drop it here. So now filters has disappeared from the left lower part, and I brought it to the right lower part. Let's say the publish, you don't use it, or you don't want it here, or whatever you may wish to do, you want to bring it over here for whatever reason. So I brought publish over here. These are all very, very personal choices that you can make. Okay, so by the same token, I want to move the workflow in a separate region, so I click on workflow, cancel that. So I click on workflow and I decide I want the workflow over here. Can I move it up there? No, it has to be one of the viewing windows. So I want it there, and I want to bring the filters back in here. So now I've created my own customized workspace. Remember, any of these options that you create, you can then, once you're happy with it, you can save your workspace and all those wonderful things. And lastly, there's this bottom half of the window on the right. So it has an option of keywords. So you can create keywords. And again, while you're in the keywords region, go to the flyout menu and you can import keywords, export keywords, or whatever that you want. Now, if you select, let's say I select places and I open up, I can go in here while this is active. I can add a new keyword, new sub-keyword, rename, delete, expand if it's a hierarchy. So let's say if it was collapsed like this and it's selected, I could say expand all, and it shows me every detail that exists in there. Or I can go back and I say collapse all. So this is one of the things. And while you're selected any one of these spaces, you also have the option at the bottom. So you notice there's this tiny arrow which is pointing to the right. So it's going to be a subcategory or a sub-keyword. And this would be a new primary keyword that you will create. And this will help you delete or remove or eliminate anything that may exist within there. In the metadata, basically what it does is it tells you the information that resides within that image based on the camera or whatever it may be. So currently there is no metadata regarding the exposure or anything associated with it. There's file properties and it gives me all the information. And if I go to core, it gives me all the information that I may have embedded with this particular image in terms of the keywords or whatever it may be. And once again, you have the ability to edit. So if I click on the edit, and now I can move in and delete or add whatever I may wish to do. So there's a whole lot of information, and it gives you information. So camera data, nothing is here. GPS, audio, so you can also preview and view audio files, video files, and DICOM, which are medical files. So there's all of those things can be reviewed here in terms of the metadata and whatnot. So once you have created a space that you like, you can always go into Window, go into Workspace, and you can say New Workspace. And let's say I'm going to call it my own, whatever it may be. Save sort order as part of workspace, save window location as part of, absolutely yes, save. So now what I have done is, notice, added my own workspace over here. Now I can always come back and say, hey, let's reset my essentials. And I go to essentials and I simply say reset workspace. And it will go back to its original default look and everything else. But here the advantage is I can simply come and click here and it will revert to my workspace. So I can always scroll through and figure out which one works better for me. This is primarily the basic working interface for Adobe Bridge. In the next video, we will be looking at the preferences and how we can set the color management system for all the Adobe applications and a few other things over here. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.